I've spent 20 years crossing the world's most severe deserts and jungles. But I've never tackled the extreme cold. Now, my aim was to survive in the Arctic with dogs, cross the Bering Strait, and to film it all myself. I travelled 450 kilometres north with my dog team, my translator, and 2 Chukchi hunters. The dogs were still not convinced by my leadership. So far, I'd managed to get them lost in the Arctic night, taken them over a cliff, and brought them into the territory of their arch enemy, the Arctic wolf. I was getting desperate for a second lead dog that would actually listen to me, and have resorted to putting Jack, probably the most aggressive animal in Siberia, up front with Top Dog.
Jack, this is not the time nor the place. Let go of Frank now.
We had left the fishing settlement of Welkarl and were halfway to Enmelen, a whaling outpost on the very edge of Siberia. Ahead of us was the most dangerous section yet, when we'd be forced to cut inland and travel down a frozen river valley to the coast. With the smell of wolves all around us, the dogs were on edge. They had every reason to be scared. These dogs may be tough, they thrive at -40 and eat nothing but frozen walrus, but the Arctic wolf is huge, the biggest in the world. Just one could rip apart my entire team.
You can tell when the dogs are unhappy because they'll look around to me if their harness is twisted, or if they're injured, or if they're insecure. And at the moment they're insecure, one by one they're looking around to me for comfort. Everyone except Bernard, who's seen it all before and isn't fazed by anything very much. But they want reassurance about these wolves. Not much I can do to reassure them, but we can keep on moving and stick together.
While Jack, the dog I'd put up in front with Top Dog, had so far been behaving himself and hadn't attacked anything for at least an hour.
It's time to see if Jack can take an order. So I'm going to say takate, which means left. Sounds simple, I know, but these dogs have a way of making things complicated. Tak, 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 tak.
A lead dog that listens at last. Or maybe not.
That's the moment he's been waiting for. Totally unprovoked attack by Jack. Lunging in there, teeth bared. Toiler's managed to get away.
The other dog drivers decided to stay out of range of Jack's teeth and went on ahead.
Theoretically, we're now coming up to a hunting shack, and we know we're very near because the dogs have started speeding up. They can see it, or they can smell it. Somehow they can sense it's very near.
Yasha fired a flare to guide me to the huts.
It's like trying to gain access to some ancient Egyptian tomb.
The only visitors to these huts in the last 20 years were blizzards.
It's a lovely hunting shack, but what would be really good would be to find a room without a snowdrift in it.
Yasha managed to find another shack.
This is more like it, a house without a snowdrift.
It was probably Saturday night, but there wasn't much of a nightlife out here. It was just a question of getting a few thousand calories of raw walrus inside us and crawling into our sleeping bags.
I thought I was an early riser, but it's 5:30 in the morning and the others are well into their daily routines. Хорошо.
Во.
Dreams?
Жарко, жарко. Печка, жарко.
Lovely and warm.
Кукуль.
Uh-huh.
Опять.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Had a dream of a Volk.
Ну,
With big eyes.
может, они здесь были, тут, наверное, пока слепу.
Yeah, wolves patrolling. Собака не...
Ну, а если близко, наверное, близко будет, тут они будут.
We were heading up the coast towards Enmelen, past a newly opened crack in the ice. Yesterday this was solid, but the wind and sea currents mean the surface is constantly changing. The weather conditions were perfect.
I feel like a dip in the sea, actually. Bobbing about in the icy water out there is a duck of some sort, enjoying the early open waters, the very, very first sign of spring. But there's no point in getting your hopes up because proper spring is a good 2 months away.
Jack had an old-fashioned leadership style.
Jack, it's not the time nor the place. Let go of Frank now. You're in fighting mood. You've cut Frank's nose. Look at this. It's okay, Frank. Extra bit of meat for you tonight. A snowstorm has come out of absolutely nowhere, and conditions are worsening by the moment. We know there's a hunter shack out here somewhere. We can hardly see our dogs at the moment.
Apart from wolves, wind is the one thing dogs hate. And with a wind chill of -50, there's a danger they'd refuse to move. We had to find shelter, and fast. We needed a miracle. Suddenly, we got one.
Where are we? It seems to be a small shack with lots of other people in it.
We'd stumbled across the one reindeer herder's hut in hundreds of square kilometers of empty tundra. They'd switched their lights on to guide their herders home, and it had saved us.
Чего новенького? Иранги пойдешь? Масла нет. Нету масла, масло течет, он обратно поедет.
These herders spend months on end out here, isolated from their families who stay in the settlements. They don't own the reindeer they look after. They're employed by Russian businessmen who pay them not in cash, but in bullets and vodka. This is how I imagined the real Wild West would have been. Life here is as tough as it gets. Survival is their only ambition.
I was wondering how everything gets done here, and the answer is that whoever loses while playing cards has to cut up the ice or clean the dishes, although I don't think anyone actually cleans the dishes. So it's worth winning.
Туркану.
3 days later, the blizzard stopped, and we could finally go outside. The wind was so strong it had cleared the snow from the tundra. This was great for the reindeer herd, which could feed more easily, but it was a different story for us. Without snow, we couldn't move our sledges. The herd was 500 strong and needed at least 4 people to guard and move it. The reindeer eat lichen, and they need to keep moving to fresh sources as they exhaust the local supply. The herders watch the reindeer like predators, forcing them to run, looking out for weak animals. Once one has been spotted, it is isolated and brought down. Then another skill comes into play. They need to skin the animal in less than 10 minutes. Otherwise it freezes solid, and the hide is impossible to remove.
This is the coldest bit of the hut, and it serves as the deep freeze. And it says something about the temperature outside that I have to take my hat off here because I'm too hot in my furs. Anyway, got the meat section. That's got reindeer. There's a sable. I suppose the sable is going to be used for meat. It'll be supper tonight. The skin will be used for someone's fur hat. And down below, you've got the arm of a polar bear. Unfortunately, last week a polar bear made a great mistake. It actually attacked a hunter and he shot it dead. He said it was self-defense, but I have a feeling he wanted the skin between you and me. Anyway, the deep freeze. I'm getting a bit too hot in here, so I'm going outside again.
Yasha and Tolya were making a few final adjustments to the sledges before the next stage of our journey. The storm had taken its toll on the bindings.
I have to resist the charms of these animals because, yeah, they want to be friends and I'd love to be friends with them. Yasha almost died because he was too kind to his dogs. They were in control and he wasn't, and they led him into the sea. He survived, but all the dogs drowned. And after that, he took a much firmer stand. He told me never let a dog push you out of the way. Always push it out of the way. Never step over a dog. Just kick it aside. That sounds so hard, but these animals are tough.
Tough enough to bask in the sun at -30.
Okay. Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Может быть, эти мне тебе, а вот тебе мне.
Oh, you want to swap your watch? I think he wants to swap my extremely expensive watch for his nasty broken one.
Поменяться.
Uh-huh.
У него там глубоко. Окей.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Luckily, my lovely watch is hidden away in my baggage.
This was the final stage of our journey to Enmelen. We'd successfully crossed the frozen bay and had only 80 kilometers to go. Now we had to cut inland and then follow the path of a frozen river down to the sea, crossing an estuary before reaching the settlement. I'd never tried this with the dogs before, but as long as we didn't have any wind, we should be okay.
The dogs do not like this one little bit. We're following the line of a river and they're clinging to the banks as much as they can because there's open water here. The currents are so strong under the ice. Just put my foot in the water and now I've got to quickly smear my boot with snow to form a seal to stop the cold getting in. That'll freeze that water.
The river was getting wider, and we had to find a safe place to cross. Just as Yasha went ahead to check for cracks, the wind picked up, threatening to blow him onto thin ice.
Yasha seems to be calling us across, so he thinks it's safe. Dogs are very worried indeed, and they're desperate to stay on this side, on the solid ground. Okay. This is river water ice. It's very, very clear, and the dogs absolutely loathe it. Frank here keeps trying to stop on any little island of snow, hoping the ice will go away. Oh, come on, Frank, don't be stupid. Oh, come on.
This was dangerous for the dogs, but actually I was in far more danger. With my sledge, I weighed 300 kilograms, and the first one through the ice would be me. Up ahead, Yasha and Tolya had come to a standstill. The wind was blowing so hard, they were no longer in control.
Well done. Well done, Dennis Motley.
I was stuck in the middle of the river. My dogs couldn't get a grip, and the sledge could go through the ice at any second. I'd never seen the dogs so scared. I had to do something quick.
Well done. Okay.
I got off the sledge to lighten their load and spread the weight, and started edging my way forward with the help of my ice spike. Yasha and Tolya had managed to cross. I was left alone out there.
we've made it. Well done, Dennis and Muttley at the back. Who would have thought it? Oh, at the beginning of the expedition, someone said to me, don't ever dismiss the ones that look like wimps, because they may be the ones that rescue you when the time comes. You never know what potential's inside a dog. And they had it in them. Good old Dennis, good old Muttley.
We'd finally made it to Enmalen. For the first time ever, my dog team had pulled together and actually listened to me. There can't be many towns in the world so difficult to get to. Enmalen hadn't had any physical contact with the outside world for 6 months. Its 300 inhabitants hang on to the edge of Siberia, dependent upon fish, whale meat, and supplies dropped off by sea during the summer. Once the sea freezes in October, they're on their own until June. Up above the town are the remains of the original Chukchis, who lived here in reindeer skin tents during the summer whaling season, right up until the 1950s. Then the Russians arrived. The town put on a show for me. A third of the population were performing, and the rest were watching.
У нас в гостях присутствует английский писатель Бенедикт Аллен Коллинз. Давайте поприветствуем его.
Высотные дома, сети церквей, театры, Сити, Вестминстер, Уитчест-Энд. По ним ходят автобусы 2 этажа. Сквер, пустырений, величаво, неторопливо Темза-река уплывает в туман. Это Лондон, город поэтов, город влюбленных, город туманов, вечный Лондон. Во всем этом прелесть его и красота. В этом Лондона неповторимость.
This a surprise? I've got a lot of surprises this evening, but yes, this is a surprise. That's another first for British television, an Eskimo version of Wuthering Heights. Cake. Look. Oh. What can you say?
Ну как ты еще тащил? Хорошо, что еще откусили побольше.
Next morning, I went to Enmalen's only shop to see if I could snap up any bargains.
Aha. Hello. 3 молоко. There's a lot of clicks on the abacus for 3 tins of milk.
У меня еще просьба к вам. Проведение будете, да?
Ah,
Слышь, Афанасия знаете?
Fanas.
Марков не знаете, где живет, да? Афанасий?
No, but there's a packet for Providenia.
Май доктор там.
Uh-huh.
Вот телефон.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Деньги.
Деньги.
Да, есть.
It was hard to imagine that we were the only link between these people and the outside world. Tolya was battling to keep my sledge going, working with bare hands and no hat at -20.
Tighten it up. The sledge is an amazing structure, not a single nail in its construction. It's held together by bits of twine and bits of leather, which the dogs love. And now it's time to put together the sledges again after all the damage the dogs have inflicted. People of Emulin are fed up because the outside world is no longer helping them. There's no petrol coming through, no nothing coming through. And so they're making do themselves, and they're starting to assemble dogs, round them all up and make them into dog teams. So at least that way they can get about.
I asked a local dog driver where he got his dogs from and how he'd got started.
Вот эти у отца, у моей жены отца собаки, щенки были. А это подарили мне двоих этих средних. А те передние старые, так и были.
Skills that had almost died out were being revived. People were breeding any dogs that looked like they had the 3 key qualities: strength, stamina, and intelligence. I still had very little control over my team of dogs. They had to learn to trust me because we had harsh terrain ahead. 2 mountain ranges separated us from the safety of the next settlement, the military outpost of Sereniki. This was going to be the toughest part of the journey so far. I'd never tackled severe slopes with my dogs before, and I wasn't sure how they'd cope with the strain of pulling me and 200 kilos of supplies uphill. The wind made everything more dangerous. The dogs were almost unstoppable in the Arctic cold, but even they couldn't cope with a wind chill of -60 on their wet noses. There was every chance they would give up and refuse to move. The constant threat of falling off hidden cliffs could make any lapse of concentration fatal. The wind was also blowing the snow off the mountain. Without snow, we obviously couldn't move our sledges, leaving us exposed on a mountainside to everything that the Siberian winter could throw at us.
If all goes according to plan, we'll be cutting through this gorge here and then hopefully emerging the other side.
Without snow, we were forced into following the paths of frozen streams. So far, so good. But Mad Jack, the left-hand lead dog, couldn't take the pressure. Leading is a stressful job, obeying the orders of the driver while constantly worrying about the dangers ahead. These working dogs usually live 14 years, but their leaders last only 10. The stress is just too much. We had one range left, and it was the big one. I had to do something.
I can't stand it any longer. He wanders away, he smells hares and foxes, and he's just not leading. So sacked. Well,
I had to move Mad Jack, probably the most aggressive animal in Siberia. But where to? All of the other dogs hated him. There was only one dog that could probably cope.
poor old Bernard having to put up with that maniac dog. Anyway, he's the oldest in the team. He should be able to handle him.
Bernard's best friend, Jeremy, was going to have to go up front. But without Bernard running beside him, Jeremy was at a loss. He was by far the most intelligent dog, but as with humans, leadership needs confidence.
You've either got it or you haven't, and Frank didn't have leadership qualities, and I'm afraid Jeremy is much the same. He's not leading, he's just pottering along. He doesn't know what to do out there.
We were travelling down steep slopes, and all I had to stop the sledge with was a wooden ice spike and a grappling iron. There was a serious threat of the sledge crashing into the back dogs, Dennis and Muttley. I just had to slow the sledge as best I could.
Okay, so far so good.
Disaster struck. Somehow the rope broke, and my two front dogs, Jeremy and Top Dog, ran free. Top Dog was the only one who could understand my commands. Without him, I was a runaway car without a steering wheel, and there were chasms all around us. Chief Guide Yasha chased the two escapees and managed to grab them before they vanished into the tundra. The rope had been bitten through by the neurotic Frank, who was caught red-handed. Yasha felt I should give Frank a proper beating and didn't understand why I was reluctant. To him, this was half my problem.
That was Frank. He's bitten through the rope again, separating off the two lead dogs. I am lost out here without those lead dogs. They may not be very good, but one of them is the Top Dog, and my life can depend on that rope.
Despite everything, we'd crossed the highest ridge. Just a few more valleys and we'd be clear and back down to the flat tundra.
I'm now descending the slope with my main brake gone because the handle has snapped in two, like just as if it was a biscuit.
Luckily, the dogs were exhausted, and with Top Dog reattached and actually listening to me, I avoided being dragged off into oblivion.
I'm going to be in disgrace having broken my brake. Have you seen? Uh-oh. Oh, terrible. Oh dear.
Вени, там первый столб найдем, твой я аренанг будет. Остов. Главное столб вот такой.
So understanding, and if there's one thing that stands out about their characters, Yasha and Toilers, is they're always laughing, they never let anything bother them. I suppose that's how you keep going when things really are bad. Just laugh your way through. What a laugh it is to... Certainly my team's a joke.
Yasha saw Frank nibbling the rope again.
I feel like a defeated man. Ugh. Do I look like a defeated man? Ugh. I've been sweating up and down a mountain, carrying 15 kilos worth of leather around my body, and the only compensation is that it will act like a survival suit when this lot run off, which is what they feel like doing, and at the moment I almost don't care.
The settlement of Sereniki, at last. I was exhausted and relieved we'd all arrived together with no serious injuries. I felt like a helpless child out here. Was I ever going to learn enough to survive in the tundra alone?
This is Sereniki, and it's like the set of a James Bond movie. The surveillance systems out there waiting to be blown up, big petrol depot, even got a warehouse where your maiden can be rescued from. The army barracks is down there, and I can't film that very much because my camera will be confiscated and I'll be confiscated. But this isn't a movie, it's the real thing.
Sereniki is one of the most eastern military outposts of the old Soviet Empire, and with America only 300 kilometers away, historically it was one of its most sensitive. I felt sorry for the soldiers who were doing their 2 years national service out here. Like most of the settlements I've been to, it was gradually emptying of people who were heading south to the big towns.
I'm making the most of this because we've discovered something I'm good at in the tundra, and it is defreezing bread. Oops. Don't think anyone will notice. And partly the reason why this is so successful is that everyone's senses are dulled because we've been drinking this. I'm afraid we've disgraced ourselves, and we've raided the medical cabinet. We found some alcohol for cleaning wounds, and it's very, very good. Really tastes wonderful. It's got a wonderful kick as well, largely because it's 95% alcohol. I think that's a record for me. Yes. Here's to the dogs, whackers, our friends. Yeah. Yes, what happened to yours?
On your Да, смотри, какой что-то крепкий стал.
My dogs notice me even in the dark. Hello, boys. I've come out here for no other reason than just to be with them. I'm still fond of these dogs, even though they seem to let me down. They probably feel I let them down. And according to Yasha, it's just a terrible misunderstanding. They can't understand me. Ah, Frank, what are we going to do with you? The Chooches say that I should bind his mouth with chains so he gets this bad taste in his mouth. He tastes that iron and he doesn't want to start chewing through things. But it's very late to begin that rough treatment. What I've got to keep remembering is it's not my life that's just under threat, it's theirs as well. Time's running out for us. We've got 3 or 4 days before we get to Lorna. Lorna is where the dogs come from, and it's where the owner of the dogs is. And from then I've got to start to think about being by myself out here, and that is not going to be funny. It really is not. Unless we have a really freak winter and it turns into summer suddenly. Even in summer it snows out here sometimes. Yeah, I joke about it, but it's going to be serious. It really is.
The drinking continued through the night and next morning. I went to check on Dennis.
This dog has got a problem. His pads are wearing down, or at least one of them. He's dragging his back feet a bit. Yeah, that's the one. Come on. And I'm just applying a little bit of medicine to his little paddy paw. Okay. There we are. Also, just in there, in the middle. There we are. Not too bad, is it? You're being a very good patient. Look at that. As good as new.
Inside, fueled by more surgical spirit borrowed from the hospital, Yasha had persuaded various members of the community to join him in an arm wrestling tournament.
Не, стульчик на место. Стульчик на место. Стульчик на место. 10 баксов я... Стульчик на место. Я проигрываю 10 баксов. Стульчик на место. 10 баксов я проигрываю. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Ага.
Oh. You're cheating, Yasha.
Левый. Левый, пожалуйста. Направо, что ли? Направо играется. Направо сделай. Раз, два.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Ну, это... Подожди, проблем. Это проблем.
Это проблем.
Проблем. Не, да вы без правил вообще боретесь. Куда ты? Куда? До пола? Амбрызинг или как называется? Я тебя поймал, блин. Я тебя поймал. И ты меня поймал.
It's the morning after, and things got pretty heavy last night. This is the remains of the feast, which is bits of dog food that were stolen from the likes of Dennis and Frank and Bernard, choice bits of walrus, and as for the remains of the expedition, here they are. I don't think we're going anywhere today. I'm feeling all right. Didn't touch any surgical spirit or eau de cologne or any other form of alcohol. What am I going to do? getting a little bit annoyed, I have to say, but that is the way of life here. Oh well, I could always take the dogs for a walk.
I don't think I'm going to get my swimming trunks out today. This is terrible. The worst of it is that the snow is being blown away. I don't know where it's going, but the dogs have nothing to curl up in to protect them from all this. Poor things. It's not fair. How are you doing? Little dogs. They're hoping I've come with some relief. There's nothing I can do. The snow is simply being swept away and they've got nothing to curl up in. Okay, Frankie. Hang on in there, Frankie. It could get worse. Oh dear. Difficult to believe, isn't it? I'm off indoors. Oh, I can find my way.
Two days later, the party was still going.
Oh. Uh-oh. What's that? Oh, thank you. This is industrial alcohol. It's been diluted a little bit with water. So that's brought it down to 70%.
Пойдем мы зарядку делать. Уже проснулись. Хватит спать. Хорош спать. Только...
Another day on, and the weather had cleared. Before we left, I wanted to make sure the dog's feet weren't going to get any worse.
Today, Dennis is going to be wearing a nice little bootie. Here it is, matching black. Dennis doesn't seem as proud of his boot as I am. But anyway, it's matching, and I'm sure he'll love it when he starts striding out across the tundra. Also wearing a bootie today is flashy white, and it's a flashy blue boot.
This was one of the longest stretches so far, cutting across inlets and tundra before heading along the frozen sea past storm-battered islands, then onto the whaling settlement of Lorna, home of the dogs and my two guides, Yasha and Tolya. Our route took us out past the loneliest checkpoint on Earth.
An army checkpoint in the middle of nowhere. Ah. Let us go. I think.
news update on the booty situation. Flashy white, he quite likes his little blue booty. I think really because he uses it as a headrest. As for Dennis, he's learnt how to undo the Velcro. It's just a question of whether he can get away with it. Stupid dog, it's for your own good.
Rick, Rick, Rick. Rick, Rick, Rick. No, Bernard.
Bernard has got a soft spot for a certain little lady in Tolik's team. Afraid it's too late for him to have children by her. He's had a little operation. Never mind, Bernard.
It later emerged that he hadn't been quite as castrated as we'd thought.
I love being on the road again. This is such a beautiful, dreadful place. It's cruel, it's horrible at times, but it's exquisite. It's just so pure somehow. The air, the virgin quality of it makes you feel good to be touched by it.
We were coming into reindeer country again. This meant more wolves, and also the possibility of the dogs breaking loose and hunting the reindeer themselves.
Look at my team go. At night they are scintillating. Absolutely wonderful. It's because they're such late risers, I think. You only get going at around now in the dark, and all the ones that are bad normally suddenly shine. Creatures like Muttley, his little tail waving. He loves it in the dark. Bernard, he's happy to be on the left or the right. Normally insists on being on the left. But the amazing thing is the speed they're going. We're still at the back, behind Yasha's team and Tolik's team, but we could actually overtake them. I know it sounds like an idle boast, but no, it's actually true. Unbelievable.
There's a light up ahead, and as there are no houses out here, it can only be from a Hiranga, which is one of the traditional reindeer skin tents used by the herders. And I think it'd be a good idea to stop for the night, as it's heaven knows how late.
We'd found the camp of 5 reindeer herders who made us welcome for the night. Reindeer are everything to these people: shelter, clothing, food and currency. These nomads amazed me, living out here in just a tent. They took it all in their stride, but even they thought it would be crazy to attempt to survive alone in the Arctic wilderness. But I was determined to set off alone and somehow convince my dog team they could trust me to take them out into the shifting ice floes of the Bering Strait.
Stay with us here on